Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another Flyway office hours. My name is Tay, and I'm the product marketing manager for Flyway. And I'm joined today, as always, by Johnny, who's our product manager, as well as Mikkel, Julia, and Phil, who are the members of the Flyway development team. So you may have noticed that we haven't done one of these streams in a couple of months, and at the risk of stating the complete obvious, that was obviously because of our changing working situations, not just for us, but globally. So normally we would be streaming, and we have been streaming to you guys and to the community from the Redgate headquarters in Cambridge. But as you can see now, the entire Flyway team is working remotely, as is the case actually with kind of all the teams at Redgate. Obviously, working from home, it's going to present its own challenges for everyone. But I think as a team, we can say that we've been really pleased with how we've all adjusted and the fact that we've been able to keep pace with the level and really the cadence of updates that you guys have come to expect from us. And what's more pleasing than that is to say that the team has released two minor versions, version 6.3 and version 6.4, since the last time that we actually did a community stream. So even with the disturbance to normal working situations for a lot of our community and the users that we've been speaking to, it's really good to see kind of the continuing high levels of engagement with Flyway and with the team that we've been seeing, whether that's from our contributors, users sharing their knowledge on Stack Overflow, or even to the people who've been tweeting us kind of just interesting articles, insights they found from their time using Flyway and in their experience with Flyway. So please keep that going, and thanks to everyone who's reached out already. Now, those two releases I mentioned since the last office hours means there's a lot for us to talk to you about today and a lot to show you as well. So I'm keen to just hand over to the team as quickly as possible. They're going to take you through the updates, give you some demonstrations of the new features, and finally we'll take a look at what's upcoming as well for Flyway. As usual, it's not a surprise if you've been on our other streams. We do leave some time at the end to answer any questions that you guys may have. So as we go through the session today, I'd encourage you to just use the Q&A box in Zoom or just pop it in the chat to just ask us whatever you'd like. Cool. I think that's about it from me. So I'm going to wrap up there and just hand over to Phil. I think you're taking the lead.
Right. So I'll just give a quick overview of the highlights of the last two minor versions. So in Flyway 6.3, we released support for working directories for all clients, repeatable migrations, placeholders rerun. Whenever you change the placeholder values, you support now a new timestamp placeholder, multi-line configuration files, and a variety of other improvements. Some of these you will have seen in the last office hours demonstration. And in Flyway 6.4, we added some more things. Support for piping configuration files into Flyway from the command line. We'll see a demo of this in a minute. Also, we support now wildcards in Flyway locations, which have allowed a whole number of other ways of structuring your configuration files. Better support for cockroach DB and a variety of other performance and pass improvements. And now Mikhail's going to give a demo of that configuration file piping.
Cool. Okay. So what I have here is a Flyway installation, and you can see I have a configuration file here with some credentials and the database connection. So the new feature we included in 6.4 is you can now pipe configuration file text into the command line. So I can obviously read the contents of the file to the terminal, and using piping, pipe that into Flyway, and now works. Now, obviously that by itself is a bit trivial because Flyway can already read configuration files. However, the flexibility of the fact you can now pipe config strings into Flyway means you can combine different operations together to get sort of more power and flexibility out of Flyway. One of the things you can do is you can actually encrypt your configuration file in a variety of ways. I'm going to use GPG for this example. So I'm going to encrypt it with this calls a GPG, one I made earlier. Call that, and you can see that that has produced an encrypted version of that configuration file. I can decrypt it. This magic incantation. I'm going to ask for my password. And you can see that has now been outputted in plain text. And the cool thing you can do is you can just pipe that into Flyway info or any Flyway commands, and it picks it up. So that's one example of the flexibility having this new feature provides. We've had a issue on our GitHub page around, Flyway encrypting configuration files, and now that's one way of doing it with the command line. It's pretty nice for us because we didn't have to add any extra code. It sort of reduces the maintenance overhead, and it still enables that feature to work. There is a blog post about that on the Flyway 6.4 release blog, so I'll just show that here. So you can read more about how I did that on that page. And yeah, that's it for my demo. So I will pass to Julia to look at Git Hooks and Flyway. Just mute myself here. I realize I need to pass screen sharing to her. Not just
you have to give it to me, right?
Yes.
Right. So let's put my screen up. So I'm going to give you a quick rundown of a way you can improve the way teams work together with with Flyway. If you're a single developer, you tend not to have too many problems. You can just write a series of scripts and version them 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. And basically things just work. But when you start working with a team, you introduce the problems that you need to be aware of what your team is working on and guard against creating situations where Flyway can't do its work. Now I'm going to give you a quick example. I've got my repository here with 3 scripts in, v1, v2, v3. It doesn't really matter what's in them, just that they work. And let's say I'm developing away. I'm going to add v4. I'm not going to put anything particularly important in it, because that's not really the point of the demo. It will just be a trivial little script. There we go. And now, there we go. We've now got a nice sequence of v1, v2, v3, v4. And in my local environment, that shall run fine. So I'm about to put it into my source repository. And just before I do, I'll just do a quick git pull. So I'm going to pull the work from my colleagues who are also busy working on this application. And if I now go ahead and run things without checking what the files are, I'll miss the fact that my colleagues have also added a v4 script. And now this, if I commit this back, we're going to have problems on our build server. If Flyway's running there, it's going to see 2 scripts with the same number and not know what to do. However, when I add my new script, so git add that, and then try and commit it to my local repository, you'll see Git has actually delegated off to my local instance of Flyway to do a quick Flyway validate. And it's pointed out to me before I've even committed this to my local repo that I've got a problem. I've got 2 v4 scripts. And the way this happens is I have, if I cd2.git/hooks, there are a whole range of places where I can hook into the Git lifecycle. And in this case, I've created a little bash script here called pre-commit. And this runs just before Git tries to commit my changes to the local repo. And what it does is Flyway validate. I'm going to validate against an in-memory database that I'm going to create on the fly. Just because I'm looking at the scripts, I'm not really interested in what they do. I'm going to point the locations at this place in my file system and say, ignore pending migrations. I know they haven't been run. I'm just checking the validity of the file names. And if that comes back successful, I say, yeah, successful. And if not, then I throw an error code back to Git, and Git now knows it's got to abort the commit because there's a problem. As you can see here, Flyway validation failed. It's aborting the commit. So I'm prevented from actually submitting back any problems. And now if what I can then do is cd back up a couple of folders. Oops, sorry, I only remember Unix. Right. I can now git star and hit -m v5. Now it's fine. Now it's fine. It'll go off and it'll create the v5 script, and it's removed the v4 script that I created by mistake. Now you can get more adventurous than this. Here's an alternative. If you want to do more checks before you start committing things back, this little pre-commit hook does a Flyway clean of a database that I'm quite happy to throw away. It's a local copy, a little dummy copy in SQL Server, and then it'll do a migrate. Much the same way, if migrate succeeds, it'll allow the commit to happen, and if migrate fails, then it will stop the commit. It'll tell me, and I can go back and I can sort out my problems. And that stops me submitting problematic scripts into the source code repository. And hopefully it'll keep your teammates happier. Right, so do I hand back?
Julie, is the plans to write those up as a blog post with some code examples as well?
Yes, I'm going to be publishing it as a blog post in the near future. It will appear on flywaydb.org.
Superb, thank you.
Right, and there we go.
Can you all see the screen?
Yep. Yeah, we're good. All right, so this is something I was going to talk a bit about. So for Flyway 7, we're obviously looking at where we're going to go, and the major version number tends to mean two things. One is that we're looking at compatibility issues, and that brings the question of Java 7 support. Now, Java 7 has been dying off a lot in recent years. It's been out of extended support for 2 years. It's been out of mainstream support for nearly 6. And as you can see in SNCC's survey, maybe 3% of people are still using it somewhere in production. Now, obviously we try and keep compatibility with as many old versions of things as possible. There's no reason to move along quickly and break things for customers, but version 7 is now becoming a problem for us, in that there's things we want to do, there's things that people want us to do that we can't do in Java 7 because we're relying on other people who are only implementing stuff in Java 8. Two of those features are Amazon S3 storage for migration scripts. The Amazon SDK supports Java 8 onwards in the version we want to work with. And Scram authentication in Postgres requires a change to the database driver to bring it up right up to date. And again, that is dependent on using Java 8. As soon as we flip the Java version over, we can then start pulling all the new versions of drivers which bring new functionality, and it brings reliability and performance enhancements as well. So yes, Java 7 being taken out brings some little headaches, but it also brings a lot of new opportunities for us. And we think that the time is now right to move on. There's an issue in GitHub issues to talk about V7 and Java 7 implications. And if you've got any feedback, we'd love to hear from you there. The second point with bringing in a major version bump is that we can make backwards incompatible changes in the schema history. So we're gonna warn you well in advance that if once you've gone to version 7, it's not easy to migrate back to version 6. And in this case, what we're looking at are some changes to the history table. They're minor ones, but they do allow us then to go and support case insensitive modes of operation in Oracle and Snowflake, where the code that we've had for a long time works most of the time, but there are some edge cases that we can then sort out, particularly with Snowflake, where case insensitive mode is switched on by default, and there's peculiar options to actually make that can make Flyway just break altogether. We want to be able to sort those out, and this gives us a chance to do that work. Again, if you've got any feedback, we'd love to hear it. And with that, over to Johnny.
Great, thanks, Julia. So as Julia said, we're thinking about V7, which we obviously we're currently at version 6. So what do we bring into V7? Julia's has covered some of those big moves in terms of potential breaking changes, but also what that brings us and the potential that brings us for the product. One of the things I want to talk about is a new feature that we're currently designing at the moment. So something we've been thinking about for a while is how can we better support the development scenarios where managing concurrent changes in Flyway is important. They sort of tend to occur in larger development teams where the prevention of a deployment is necessary, or ordering becomes superseded by need. So for example, we hear other occasions from you where you'd like Flyway to do particular things like defer execution of certain migrations for a later time, or ignore certain migrations in specific environments, or manually apply a migration and have Flyway consider it as executed, or deal with a tricky migration, or manually apply a fixed migration, or re-baseline a database. I guess you get the idea. So if you've been following our previous office hours and some of our other blog posts, you'll remember us proposing a solution to some of these scenarios, or all of them, with a new command called skip. So a quick update on where we are with that. When we drafted that proposal, we sat down, we reviewed it, and we realized that it sort of had the potential to unnecessarily complicate Flyway. And one of the things that's quite important to us, one of our design principles, is to keep Flyway simple and easy to understand. So this felt like it had the potential to add a sort of an extra degree of complexity, which was unnecessary. So for example, it's possible to achieve some of those needs above with the baseline feature, but then the adjective baseline suggests a sort of single application scenario. So should baseline be deprecated for skip? So there was lots of things for us to consider. That would have been a breaking change in itself. So all of that is really just to say that we've reframed and sort of refocused our thoughts onto a subset of those concerns, which we're notionally calling sequencing. So you've just seen a demo from Julia where she's worked around version name conflicts using Git hooks, but we think we can go further. We want to go a bit further with that. So the plan is to make this more of an integral part of Flyway and to have that ready for version 7. We want to get it right first, so we're working steadily towards it, and we want to do that as we've been doing with previous features out in the open as much as possible to get your feedback. So huge apologies for the really dull slide that you're seeing at the moment, but basically this is just a request that if you recognize any of those scenarios that I described, if the demonstration that Julia just gave feels like a good solution, but is still a workaround for those issues, then get in touch, give us your feedback. We'll again sort of give you more information about how we're progressing with the design of this feature through office hours, through blog posts. But you can reach out to us anytime at Twitter, so please do. It's at FlywayDB. I'm not sure I wrote at flywaydb.org. That's wrong. It's just at FlywayDB. And that's me. Thank you.
Perfect. Excellent job, everyone. Great demos. Really useful to get an insight into V7, which I know is a massive milestone for us, one we've been working towards for a while now. So I'm going to pause here and give our attendees just a final chance to ask any questions. Haven't seen any come through on the chat yet, but we'll just give everyone a second. Just drop it in the Q&A or the chat box. We'll be able to see it either way. Okay, cool. Looks like there aren't any questions from the attendees on the session, which obviously means we've done a fantastic job and stunned you all into silence, which is, what we were aiming for. However, I do have a plan B. So moving forward, we've decided to add a new section to our office hours where I'm going to take a look at some of the most recent questions that have been asked by the community elsewhere. I'm going to pick a couple of them and then ask them live on the stream for the devs to answer. So I've got 3 this week. The first one comes from Yannick Nederhoff on Stack Overflow, and they ask, how do I deal with previously valid Flyway migrations that become invalid? I don't know who wants to answer this one, but I'm going to leave it up to you to decide.
More than happy to.
Okay.
So this is what Flyway Repair is for. So Flyway Repair helps you fix your schema history table to match what you have on disk. So if Flyway is saying that your migration become invalid because you've changed them on disk, presumably because you've changed something on production and then mirrored those changes in your local migrations, what you want to do is you want to run Flyway Repair to say on production, these migrations I have on disk are what are currently applied. Flyway will then change the schema history table to match the checksums of the files you have on disk, and then you'll be able to continue migrating without any Flyway validation errors.
Cool. I did have a feeling you were going to answer that one, Phil, because if I take a look at Stack Overflow, I can see that Redgate's owner Grant Fritchie actually pitched in an answer, which I know that he came to you for, so for some help with. So it's good to see collaboration. Okay, the second question: is there any way to execute repeatable Flyway scripts first? And that comes from Chris Lewald, also on Stack Overflow.
So I'll pick this one up. I think it's related really to what I was talking about earlier around V7 and our desire to improve the way that you sequence scripts. So I think the short version is no, not easily, but it's something that we're considering and trying to design for in V7.
Cool. And then final question for this office hours comes from user Voices in My Head, which was then helpfully edited by Dale K on Stack Overflow as well. So they ask, can I use Flyway with the SQL Server encryption?
It seems very familiar because I think I've answered this one on Stack Overflow, but
okay.
Yes, you can. So Flyway did start supporting this in Flyway 6.2.4, I think it was. But we actually have full documentation for how to set this up on the SQL Server page on the flywaydb.org. There's an authentication section. It tells you everything you need to do. You have to download a driver, put it in a certain location, and set up a couple of other things. But all the documentation is there, and yes, we do support it now.
Very cool. So when we upload the recording of this video, I'll leave a link to all those questions on Stack Overflow as well in the description box. So just check down there if you need some kind of more guidance. But I think those answers were great. So thanks everyone. About ready to move on to the wrap-up slide, I think. Yeah. So next steps, as always, bug fixes, dealing with the issues in our current release for Flyway, and as Johnny touched on, we've got a lot of work to come for V7, and a lot of that is still in the planning stages. So we're going to continue with that and give the community an update kind of on the next office hours. We've been saying throughout that we rely a lot on your feedback. So we've got a slide now with kind of all the ways you can reach us, comment on our milestones, tweet us. We're really active on Twitter. We love even to see just if you're using Flyway in an interesting and unique way, send it to us. We will probably write a blog post or promote it somehow. We love to see that. And of course, you can kind of reach us all individually. I'll be dropping my email, team email in the description box as well. So there's a whole host of ways to reach out to us. Just let us know what you think. Challenge the team. Ask any questions you've got. Just going to throw it back to the team one final time. Anything else anyone wants to mention before we wrap up?
No, I just want to say thank you for all the demos. I thought they were excellent. And yeah, it would be great to see the blog posts and snippets of those saved separately.
Cool. Great job, everyone. Thanks for everyone who attended, and thanks for watching our recording. Make sure you tune into the next one, and we'll see you then.